It was a golden afternoon in Beverly Hills, the kind of day where the sunlight poured down in steady waves, the air crisp, and the world seemingly in order. Snoop Dogg, clad in casual elegance, had planned a peaceful outing with his family at one of the city's most exclusive private clubs. Nothing extravagant, just lunch by the pool, some laughter, a quiet escape from the buzzing demands of fame. They were greeted at the entrance by a woman in pearls who barely glanced at them before hastily gesturing toward the sign-in desk. No warm welcome, no smile. Snoop noticed it, but said nothing. His wife, Shantae, wrapped her arm through his and offered a soft grin. "Maybe they're just busy," she whispered. Cordell and Corey trailed behind, dressed in tasteful summer wear, excited for the afternoon. But something was off. As they made their way to the dining area, eyes followed them, not with curiosity but with scrutiny. Conversations quieted. A couple sipped wine while casting disapproving glances. When the hostess approached, her tone was clipped, as though performing a duty rather than extending hospitality. "You'll need to wait. The patio is full." Snoop looked over her shoulder. Empty tables dotted the space. "We don't mind waiting," he replied, calm but firm. They were eventually seated near the back, close to the kitchen doors. The family shared a few light jokes, brushing off the tension. But it didn't stop there. Their server took longer than usual. Orders were mixed up. Water came late. Nearby guests received better treatment. Snoop's instincts flared. This wasn't just poor service, this was something deeper, something familiar. The breaking point came when Corey stood up, ready to join a few kids in the pool. She wore a tasteful one-piece and a cover-up. But just as she approached the water, a lifeguard called out, "Excuse me, you can't go in like that." Corey paused. "Why not?" "You're not in proper swim attire." "It's club policy." Snoop and Shantae looked up from their table. A silence fell. "But there are others in bikinis and trunks," Cordell pointed out, visibly upset. The lifeguard shrugged. "It's not personal." Corey's face twisted, the sting of public humiliation sinking in. She turned and walked back, her eyes glossy. Shantae stood up immediately, fury in her stride. "What exactly is the problem?" she asked. The lifeguard hesitated. "I don't make the rules." "No, but you choose how to enforce them," Shantae snapped. Snoop remained seated, jaw clenched. He looked at Corey, who had now buried her face in a napkin. That was it. The moment that shifted everything. This wasn't about a pool or a swimsuit. It wasn't about lunch or service. It was about dignity. And someone had just tried to strip his daughter of hers. Before we go deeper into what happened next, make sure you hit that subscribe button. These stories matter because they show us what really happens behind closed doors, even to people you think are untouchable. Back at the table, the air had changed. No more jokes, no more rationalizing. Just a quiet rage forming behind Snoop's shades. He rose slowly, placed a hand on Corey's shoulder and looked around the pool deck. Every eye turned away, except one. A young woman with a phone recording discreetly from behind her sunglasses. The first spark had been lit, and the fire was just getting started. Back in the car, the silence was thick. Cordell tapped his knee anxiously, staring out the window. Shantae held Corey's hand, rubbing her knuckles slowly, gently. Snoop sat in the front, his jaw set, sunglasses still on even as the sun dipped lower behind the hills. "Say something," Shantae whispered, barely audible. Snoop exhaled. "I'm trying not to explode." Corey's voice was soft. "I didn't do anything wrong." "No, baby," Shantae said, turning to her. "You didn't." "Not one thing." Cordell turned around in his seat. "Why do we always have to take the high road? Why can't we ever just call it what it is and let people feel what we feel for once?" Snoop didn't answer, but he heard the question loud and clear. In his mind, he was a teenager again, walking home from school in Long Beach, a cop car crawling behind him. The officer stepping out just to ask why he was walking in that neighborhood. The memory was old, but it returned with brutal clarity, because even now, with fame, with success, with everything he had built, he still saw his children go through it. "It never ends," he murmured. "Not really." Shantae looked at him. "So what do we do now?" Snoop removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. We don't let them win. Later that evening, they sat around their kitchen table. Phones buzzed with group texts and missed calls. A friend who had been at the club sent a message. "I saw someone filming when you were leaving. Looks like it's already online." Snoop opened the link. The video was short, just a few seconds. Corey walking back from the pool, clearly upset. Shante confronting the lifeguard. Snoop standing silently, commanding presence even in stillness. The caption read, "Even Snoop Dogg's family gets profiled at elite clubs. Shameful." He played it again and again. Cordell leaned over. "You gonna post about it?" "I don't know," Snoop replied. "What do you mean you don't know?" Cordell asked, raising his voice. "You post everything else." "Why not this?" "Because once I do," Snoop said slowly, "there's no going back. It becomes a headline. It becomes a fight. It becomes about me, not her. And I want this to be about what's right, not about who I am." Shante nodded. "But if we stay quiet, we're letting them erase her pain." He paused, looked at Corey. She met his eyes. "I want them to know what they did." That settled it. Still, Snoop needed a moment to breathe. He walked out to the backyard, the sky now purple and gold. The city buzzed in the distance. For all its glamour, its wealth, its promises, there were places that still didn't see his family as worthy. He remembered the promise he made to himself years ago, that his kids would grow up freer than he did, safer, seen. And yet here he was, watching that same cycle wrap its claws around his daughter's heart. When he returned inside, Corey was asleep on the couch, wrapped in a blanket. Shante kissed her forehead and looked up. "So?" Snoop picked up his phone. "I'll say what needs to be said, but on my terms." The family nodded. "Ici." Something unspoken passed between them, a unity born not just from blood, but from shared fire. And outside, somewhere in the night, the first sparks had begun to catch wind. By morning, the storm had started. Snoop's Instagram post hit just after sunrise. A black background, white letters. "My family deserves respect. We were disrespected. This ain't about fame. It's about dignity." He didn't name the club, didn't show faces, just the truth. And it was enough. The video that had circulated quietly overnight now surged with attention. It was reposted by fans, celebrities, journalists. Within hours, hashtags erupted across platforms. "Stand with Snoop. Dignity is not optional. Club exposed." Major media outlets picked it up like wildfire. TMZ ran the headline, "Snoop Dogg's family faces discrimination at elite Beverly Hills club." The Shade Room followed. Then CNN. At first, the club tried to stay silent, but silence turned into suspicion. People dug through reviews, stories from others, mostly quiet complaints now echoing loudly. And when the pressure mounted too high, the club finally issued a statement. It read, "We regret any discomfort caused to Mr. Broadus and his family during their visit. Our staff acted in accordance with policies meant to ensure the experience of all guests. However, we acknowledge the situation could have been handled with more care." Snoop read the words slowly, then looked at Shante. "This is nothing," she said. "Not even close to accountability." Cordell scoffed. "They're not sorry, they're just caught." Corey remained quiet, her expression hardened. Snoop picked up his phone again, recorded a short video. "I see y'all. I see the love. I see the anger, too. But let's get one thing straight. This ain't just about me. This is bigger than me. That place disrespected my family because of who we are and who we've always been, so don't accept their non-apology. Demand better." The video racked up millions of views in hours. The comments section overflowed with support. LeBron James tweeted, "Same story, different day, tired of it, with you, Snoop." Viola Davis posted, "The pain we feel when our children are dehumanized, there's no fame that shields us from it. Sending love to the Broadus family." It was no longer a single story, it was a symbol. Journalists combed through Snoop's past interviews, highlighting his long-time commitment to justice and equality. Talk shows began debating the responsibility of elite institutions. Legal analysts dissected the potential implications. Civil rights lawyers offered free counsel. The pressure built like a wave. And behind the noise, The Broaddus family tried to maintain peace. Neighbors dropped by with flowers. Letters arrived at their gate from families saying, "Thank you for speaking up." One came from a young girl who wrote, "I look like your daughter. What happened to her happens to us all, but now the world sees it." Still, Snoop knew visibility wasn't victory. Attention came fast, but so did distraction. He had to think carefully. This couldn't be just a moment. It had to mean something. Over dinner that night, he raised the idea. What if we don't just talk? What if we act? Cordell leaned in. Like what? "I'm thinking bigger," Snoop said. "Not just about that club, about all of them. The whole system." Shante nodded slowly. "So we make it count." He looked at each of them, knowing the next steps would matter more than the noise. But as the headlines piled up and the world demanded answers, the Broaddus family sat steady, preparing to turn hurt into purpose. Because when you've lived through fire, you don't just put it out. You learn to light the way forward. The decision came without press conferences or legal threats. Snoop's response wouldn't be a lawsuit. It would be a stage. Within 2 weeks, plans were underway for a public event unlike any other. A unity concert called Respect Us, designed to uplift, heal, and ignite. It wouldn't be about revenge. It would be about recognition. Not a fight for one family's dignity, but for the collective dignity of a community long overlooked. Snoop personally reached out to artists, activists, and leaders. The response was overwhelming. From Kendrick Lamar to Alicia Keys, from Ava DuVernay to Colin Kaepernick, names known for their talent and for their courage, they didn't hesitate. As the event approached, anticipation flooded social media, not because it was a concert, but because it was a moment. When Snoop stepped on stage, he didn't rap. He stood at the mic and told the story. "No father," he said, voice heavy, "should have to watch his daughter questioned, belittled, erased, just for being who she is. And no mother should have to hold back her fury just to protect her peace. We were disrespected. But what they didn't know is, we don't break, we build." The crowd erupted, not in cheers but in solidarity. Then came Shante, calm, poised, fierce. "They tried to make us small," she said, "but we brought everyone with us." The night was filled with more than music. Between performances, stories were shared, of bias in country clubs, discrimination in schools, profiling in stores, each one unique, yet painfully familiar. Each met with nods, tears, applause. The audience was more than spectators, they were witnesses. Then Cordell took the mic. "Some people say this isn't a big deal," he began. "They say it's just a pool, just a lunch, but every little moment adds up. That moment with my sister, when she was shamed in front of strangers, that stays with you. We carry those memories like shadows, until we speak them out loud." He paused. The silence was electric. "I used to think we had to stay calm to be accepted. But now I know we don't need to be accepted, we need to be respected." Applause surged like a wave. The words landed not just in ears, but in hearts. Corey joined them later, her voice quiet but clear. "I didn't ask for attention. I just wanted to swim. But they looked at me and saw something wrong, and now I know that I'm not the problem." "They are." Her words, simple and raw, cut deeper than any headline. People in the crowd wept, not out of pity but from recognition. She had turned a moment of humiliation into a declaration of strength. The concert raised millions. Every dollar went to civil rights organizations focused on access, inclusion, and education. Legal funds were established to support families who'd faced similar discrimination. Workshops were launched for businesses to confront bias in their institutions. More importantly, it forced a conversation, loud, national, and long overdue. The club that started it all came under investigation. Their board faced pressure from members, regulators, and the media. Days later, several top executives resigned. Policies began to shift, not just there, but across other elite spaces, where unspoken bias had long gone unchallenged. But the Broaddus family didn't celebrate revenge. They focused on the bigger win. They had taken a private wound and made it a public reckoning, not to destroy but to rebuild. And in doing so, they reminded a nation that real power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it simply stands and dares the world to do better. Months passed. The headlines faded, the viral posts slowed, but the impact lingered. For the Broaders family, life didn't return to normal. It evolved into something stronger. In a candid interview with a national outlet, Snoop sat with Shante, Cordell, and Corey. No stage, no spotlight, just a living room and truth. "We didn't want to become a symbol," Snoop said. "But maybe that's what it took." Corey, now more composed, more grounded, reflected on what the incident had meant. "That day hurt," she admitted. "Not just because of what they did, but because for a second I started to wonder if I really didn't belong. I questioned myself." She paused, her voice steady. "But then I saw how people responded. Strangers, kids, mums, black families who said, 'That happened to us too.' It made me realize we're not alone. And that means I don't have to be quiet." She had since enrolled in a public speaking program, not to be a celebrity, but to be heard, to lead, and to lift others with her voice. Cordell, too, had shifted. He launched a digital platform connecting young black creators to mentorship and funding. "We're not just reacting," he said. "We're creating the future." Shante spoke last. "People think fame protects you, but it doesn't. What protects us is each other, our unity, our refusal to shrink." Snoop nodded. "This changed how I see my role. I'm not just here to entertain, I'm here to stand. Loud when I need to be, silent when it's time to listen, but always present." Clips from the concert continued to circulate. School curriculums picked up the story as a case study in cultural bias. And the club? They released new training protocols and invited oversight from independent civil rights groups. Not a cure, but a start. Still, the most powerful change wasn't in policies, it was in perspective. Corey received a letter weeks later from a private school in Georgia. It read, "Your strength inspired our entire class. We created a mural in your honor. We call it belonging. Thank you for showing us what courage looks like." She framed the letter, not for pride, but as a reminder of how far a single voice could travel. Snoop stood in front of a high school crowd one morning, invited as a guest speaker. He told the students, "Listen, there will be times when people try to make you feel small. Don't let them. Look them in the eye. Let them know you know who you are. That's power. That's legacy." He left them with a final thought. Change doesn't always start in boardrooms or courts. Sometimes it starts at a lunch table, with your child, with your family, with the decision to say not today. If this story moved you, if you believe in standing up when silence feels easier, in choosing dignity over comfort, subscribe now and be part of a community that doesn't turn away. Because stories like this matter, and if you want to keep walking this path with us, click the next video on your screen. It's another powerful moment where courage turned pain into progress. Together we rise.